News!
Okay, we'll start with this. Unbeaten up-and-comer in the women's featherweight division, Raven Chapman, posted this, rather reposted this to her Instagram stories and expressed desire from the 120 Seconds podcast to see Raven Chapman share the ring with Sky Nicolson in what would be a battle of the unbeatens, a battle of the unbeaten featherweights, a Matchroom versus Queensberry kind of deal. We know that 2 or 3 days ago, His Excellency, Turkey Alalshikh, pitched the idea that he wants to do a 5-for-5 Matchroom versus Queensberry show later on this year, that kind of deal. And Sky Nicolson versus Raven Chapman, that's what that would be. That would be a Matchroom versus Queensberry kind of deal, here and now.
No.
If that fight were to happen inside the next 1 to 2 fights, it's a fight I think the Queensberry fighter can win. It's a fight I think Raven Chapman is suited for. Her base style, her mid-range to inside pressure fighting and volume punching, her aggression, her spite. It's all wrong for today's Sky Nicolson. Because Sky ain't got no inside game, so if you get inside on her, she's defenseless. As pure boxers like Sky often are at that proximity, why do you think she spends so much time moving lateral and staying on the outside behind her jab instead of stepping into it? Oh, I understand that she looked good, she looked strong against Lucy Wildheart, but Lucy Wildheart is no Raven Chapman. She ain't got Raven's speed, power, firepower, or combinations. Credit to Sky for stepping her game up, though here and now, I'm not sure she could handle Raven Chapman for 10 rounds. This ain't the amateurs. You've got to hang tough for 10 against a very aggressive fighter. And all Raven would have to do in camp in terms of preparation, getting ready for Sky, is focus on cutting off the ring because she's already got everything else.
Yeah.
Everything else she needs to win that fight.
Yeah.
The head movement, the level changes, the combination punching, the spite, and the aggression. All she'd have to do to get ready for Sky is focus on cutting off the ring in camp. Where does cutting off the ring differ from following the opponent around in a straight line? What's the difference? Cutting off the ring is sidling and or shuffling to where your opponent is going to be to limit their exits so that you can meet them there instead of following them in a straight line. If you follow your opponent in a straight line, they can set you up for shots. They can walk you into punches as well as spin off the ropes whenever you think you're closing in on them. You don't want that. You maintain a bit of space between you and the opponent and move in the direction that they're moving in so that you can meet them there and then unload. That's how you cut off the ring. And even if they manage to escape momentarily, if that happens enough times in a round and that happens enough times in a fight, it makes it obvious to the judges who's controlling the distance at which the fight is being fought, who's actually engaging, and who isn't. That you can win the rounds on activity if you don't bust her up, if you don't stop her, because she's spending too much time moving lateral, too much time on the outside, not fighting. Sky Nicolson is already more economic than Raven. You think the Saudis would support 2 women boxing in that region of the world? They already did. When Matchroom's Ramla Ali took on the Dominican Republic's own Crystal Nova. That fight, about 2-3 fights ago, that took place in Saudi, and Clarissa Shields' upcoming return to the Octagon. The PFL versus Bellator show. That's in Saudi. The fight between Raven and Sky, it's not next. Sky looks to be taking on Sarah Mahfoud for the newly vacated WBC title. And Raven Chapman, via her Instagram, she posted that she's starting fight camp for her very next fight. So this fight between them wouldn't be their next fight, but it could go down later on this year on what could be the Matchroom versus Queensberry show. It could happen in either the summer, fall, or winter months. And if it does, I like Raven Chapman to win. I don't think Sky Nicolson is proficient enough mid-range to inside for Raven Chapman's inside fighting, so Sky would spend most of that fight trying to on the outside, retreating and not engaging. Trying to stay on the outside, out of trouble. She'd lose the rounds. I don't know about any others, but that's one fight that the Queensberry Promotions fighter can win. In men's super lightweight news, Oscar De La Hoya took to his social media and stated, "It's looking like Ryan Garcia versus Jose Ramirez is getting close and happening," to which Fight Hub's Marcos Villegas queried what happened to the Rolly fight. Oscar replied by saying he priced himself out. For Rolly Romero, this is yet another instance of a PBC fighter potentially shooting themselves in the foot because, if you're not fighting Ryan, your mandatory challenger is in the queue. Ishmael Barroso, who you barely made it past the last time, he comes back into the frame. And fighting him, it won't have the profile, and it won't get you the same money that a Ryan Garcia fight would get you. So is that what Rolly and his team really want? You want to play hardball to where you negotiate yourselves out of the Garcia fight and go back in there with Ishmael, who just knocked out O'Hara Davies in one round. You want to give that guy another crack at the apple.
These guys are stupid.
I feel like the WBA could be convinced to stand down and not order a Barroso rematch so long as it's for a Ryan Garcia fight. I feel like in that scenario, the WBA might soften their stance and allow Rolly to do that. But if now the story is that he's priced himself out and that fight isn't happening, Ishmael's in the queue. What's Rolly gonna do? As far as Ryan and a potential Jose Ramirez fight, Jose, who after a career-long stint over there at Top Rank, he's been with them since his pro debut, straight out of the amateurs. He recently migrated from Top Rank over to Golden Boy Promotions.
The story is that Top Rank offered Jose $2 million in a title shot to share the ring with Teofimo Lopez in his very next fight, and he turned it down.
Likely because there were strings attached. It was a multi-fight deal, a multi-fight engagement. Essentially, he would be extending his time at Top Rank, and perhaps he didn't want that. The Teofimo Lopez fight, I think, is a much harder fight than the Ryan Garcia fight. Ryan is seen as being more beatable than Teofimo Lopez, and he's nowhere near as accomplished as Teofimo. So for Jose, you see what the appeal is. Big money for a more winnable fight than a Teofimo Lopez fight.
Stylistically, that fight favored Teofimo. The boxer puncher versus the pressure guy, that favors the boxer puncher.
What about Ryan? How does he match up with Jose stylistically?
Ryan doesn't really have a base style. It looks a lot like what he wants to be is a boxer puncher, but he's not a finished product. He's not fully developed. That's a part of why fighting him makes for a more winnable fight than a Teofimo Lopez fight.
What's interesting, what's worth noting, is the last guy that Ryan shared the ring with, Oscar Duarte. He's a mid-range to inside pressure guy, just like Jose is a mid-range to inside pressure guy. And because Ryan seems to be leaning in the direction of being a boxer puncher, the fight with Jose is actually winnable.
What?
For the most part, Oscar Duarte was roughing up Ryan Garcia in that fight. Ryan didn't look good for long spells in that fight. He didn't, but he managed to walk Oscar into a shot. Hard shot that rattled him, that buzzed him, which opened the door for Ryan to get him out of there. The same thing could happen to Jose. I know that Jose is a lot more experienced than Ryan, especially at this weight. And he comes from a good amateur background. He was an Olympian. But need I remind you that Jose's actually been at 140 for a very long time. How well is he making that weight these days, at this age? And when exactly would he be fighting Ryan? Because the last time he saw action was in March of last year. Rumor has it he's set to make his Golden Boy Promotions debut in March of this one. So you'd be fighting Ryan Garcia, having not fought in a year's time.
Ryan, who actually saw action not but a few weeks ago, he fought this year. Jose didn't.
Ryan, who if nothing else, he's fast. And he's strong. And the night of, he might actually be sharper than Jose Ramirez. You could put some asses in some seats with this fight on the West Coast, and that's where Golden Boy Promotions primarily does their shows. So this could be a decent-sized fight for the both of them.
But this is going to be Jose Ramirez's next fight. Ryan.
Well, Oscar's the one saying that the fight is very close to happening. That could mean that it's next, or that could mean it happens after next. Ideally, it would be after next. Ideally, you get Jose a tune-up fight to make his Golden Boy Promotions debut, then you put him in the ring with Ryan.
Maybe that's how they'll do it. I don't know.
But I guess Ryan isn't fighting Rolly. He's not fighting Isaac. Looks like he's fighting Jose. And finally, per a tweet from Marcos Villegas, via this DAZN interview, His Excellency Turki Alalshikh says he has reached out to Al Haymon to get some of the PBC's fighters over in Saudi Arabia. If this happens, we will finally have all the promoters working together to make the best fights happening. What may have heralded this move, this communique, is that Ray Vargas, he's supposed to be fighting in Saudi real soon against Queensbury Promotions' own Nick Ball.
Ray Vargas is a PBC guy, a champion. He has a belt.
And the PBC, They don't normally send out their belt holders to anybody's side of the street, to anybody's region of the world, Saudi Arabia or otherwise, but that's what they're doing. They don't normally do that, but that's what's going on.
It could be because they can't accommodate them the same way that they used to, trying to keep everything in-house. No, you don't got Fox giving you a budget or Showtime giving you a budget anymore. In many ways, Turkey Alalshikh reaching out to you is a lifeline that you desperately need.
It was an interesting quote from His Excellency in reference to YouTubers boxing in Saudi. He said, please, we don't want any YouTuber fights again. I want fighters. This is what I support. For me, inside my heart, I want the fighters. What I take away from His Excellency and his mysterious interest into the sport of boxing is, I take it he's a real boxing fan, because that's how real boxing fans feel. We don't want YouTubers fighting. We don't want to see that.
And he doesn't either. He doesn't want to waste time, money, resources on that kind of stuff. Now, those YouTubers, nothing against them. They have an audience that wants to see them, but the boxing fans...
I mean, we don't want to see that. The silver lining for those influencers and just influencer boxing is that it's not for guys like me and you anyway. Those influencers, they already have an audience they've amassed via social media that wants to see them, even if me and you ain't part of that audience. So it all works out.
But His Excellency, Turkey Alalshikh, he seems to be a boxing fan, a hardcore boxing fan.
It's what I took away from that, and his efforts in Saudi Arabia to bring big-time boxing to that region of the world. He seems to have unique insights into what the boxing fans want and what the boxing fans have been asking for. I don't know if that's because he's watching some of these YouTube channels and listening to what content creators are saying to gauge what it is the boxing fans really want, or it's just because he's a boxing fan himself and he knows what he wants the same way that we know what we want and what's been the holdup.
Politics.
Look at how many different fighters from how many different regions of the world and how many different promoters, some of them rivals, domestic rivals, he brought together for the Day of Reckoning card. And now he means to bring Al Heyman and at least some of his fighters into the fray. As His Excellency Turkey Alalshikh has said, he wants to bring Gervonta Davis and Devin Haney to fight in Saudi Arabia. I want him, Davis. And I sent a message now to Al Heyman. Let's do the job, brother. I want to see Haney in my country. I will try to do it in 2024.
This is from the man himself. And you can't treat this quote like any old quote from any old body. This ain't Eddie Hearn saying this and that.
Nothing against Eddie. I'm a big fan of Eddie, big fan of Matchroom, and many of Matchroom's fighters. But that's saying that it's very different when somebody like Turkey Alalshikh, who you know has stature and status, somebody you know has means and resources, somebody you know means business. It's very different when it's somebody like him saying, I've already reached out to Al Heyman. I want to bring some of his fighters here. And one among them is Gervonta Davis, but not just for nobody, for a Devin Haney fight.
Do you know what happens if Gervonta Davis don't bite? Do you know what happens if Al Heyman fucks this up?
Do you understand that they wouldn't have any excuses to make in this scenario? Because it's not about what Devin sold in his last fight. Never mind what Devin sold in his last fight. It doesn't affect what you get paid. Now you have the Saudis involved.
They were able to bring Fury and Usyk to their region of the world. Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder, many others. Dimitri Bivol, Jai Opataya, all these different promoters, some of them that are rivals. They were able to do that. And if you don't play ball...
This is the best money in boxing right now. That's what it is. And if you don't play ball, what's your excuse gonna be? What are you gonna do? You gonna hide behind weight stipulations?
I won't lie to you that at first I was a little bit annoyed that Turkey Alalshikh was reaching out to Al Heyman, giving them that olive branch.
That lifeline, because that's what it would be. Rumor has it, the Amazon deal is just a distribution deal. They're not giving them a budget the same way that Showtime and Fox used to, which left the PBC in a pinch. I want the PBC to go under. I want them to fail because I want them to go away. I think they've been horrible for boxing and have had an adverse effect on the sport.
I was annoyed.
But then I remembered, their fighters suck. Whenever they leave the biosphere, whenever they leave the bubble, they get exposed, like Wilder just got exposed by Joseph Parker. So what happens to Gervonta Davis? If you expose him to Devin Haney, he himself will be the one that gets exposed, unless he ducks.
And he still might.
PBC fighters have a long and rich history of turning down big cash in the interests of self-preservation. How Luis Ortiz and Adam Kovnowski rejected big cash for a Joshua fight, and so did Deontay Wilder several times. More famously, the $100 million he rejected just to end up getting beat by Tyson Fury.
That was stupid.
And even when the fight came back around, the Saudis got involved, and they wanted to do it. They wanted to pay for it. What happened? Wilder couldn't make it past Joseph Parker!
See, the way I see it, where initially I might have been annoyed that they might be getting a lifeline from Turkey Alalshikh, I realized he's putting them on the spot. You don't work with these people. You don't take these deals to get your fighters over there and put them in those big fights. It makes it that much more obvious to that many more people you ain't got nothing but a stable of ducks.
And that's if they don't fight. If they do, odds are they're going to get exposed. That if history is any indicator of things to come, what usually happens to a PBC fighter when he fights somebody else's fighter, what usually happens is the PBC fighter loses.
So let's see what Gervonta Davis's excuse is.
I think he's out of excuses. You don't have to worry about what Devin Haney sold in his last fight if it's the Saudis bankrolling the show. It doesn't even matter anymore. You're going to get paid handsomely for your services in that region of the world, irrespective of Devin Haney and what is or isn't his marquee value. And he's going to get paid well too, whatever it takes to make the fight. And if the Saudis can't get you in the ring with this guy, we know why.
We will.
Can try to hide behind weight stipulations. He can do that and use that as an excuse to walk away from the fight. But you walk away from the fight, well, you don't come back to America and make the money with Isaac or make the money with Rayo that you could have made with Devin in Saudi.
The Ryan Garcia fight, by the time that Gervonta returns to action, it may have been upwards of 11 months to a year since the Ryan Garcia fight. His trainer, Calvin Ford, he's in a bit of hot water.
But the Saudis want to use you. What's your excuse going to be when you reject the best money in the sport of boxing right now? How do you come back stateside and face the public after what would be an open duck?
There's no other way to describe it.
There wouldn't be in that situation.